My name is Tatu Ahpunen and I'm here to give you the welfare status. This is an ongoing series where I discuss the developments connected to the Finnish welfare state. I'm going to discuss some of the debates of the last 2 weeks, this time one that got some publicity outside of Finland and one that is very central to politics inside of Finland at the moment. If you have been following news about Finland for the past decade or so, you have heard of the experiment regarding universal basic income. A very bare bones account of what this concept means. The state pays everyone a lump sum of money each month. For instance, the Finnish Left Alliance wants this sum to be 800 euros, while the Greens advocate for 600 euros or something like that. This would be funded by replacing the current benefits and by adjusting the tax system. The Universal Basic Income, or the UBI, has been a hot topic of debate in Finland for decades. So it's not surprising that this government has concluded an actual experiment on it. Now let's get this right from the start. The experiment was flawed. The experiment chose a bunch of research subjects who receive a benefit currently most received by a long-term unemployed persons, already a hard to employ category. The short duration meant that we don't know if people would make large changes in life based on knowing that the UBI would continue. And these are just some of the flaws that left the experiment hobbled and a source of criticism right from the beginning. The experiment was wrapped up 2 weeks ago to news that it had not contributed to more unemployment, even though people it had covered were more content in their lives. And this has then been used as an excuse to dismiss UBI as a whole, both in Finland and outside of it, but I would not be so hasty. First, a few notes on why universal basic income is a good thing. Currently, our welfare benefits are means tested. This means that if you are, for instance, unemployed or recuperating from mental illness, you receive a basic benefit. But if you have also extra sources of income, your benefits receive a hefty cut. There's also the so-called earnings-related benefit. If you have been gainfully employed for a certain period of time, you receive, for a bit under a year of unemployment, a benefit equivalent to a fraction of your old pay. In the old days, the state aimed for full employment, where periods of unemployment would be temporary at most, and the unemployment benefits were at most a transitory thing. Since then, the labor market has changed, and unemployment has become a permanent fixture of society. For many poor people working odd jobs, means testing may mean that they derive only a little benefit for putting in those extra hours, or that they even lose more in benefits than they would gain in wages. This is called a benefits trap. And a universal basic income could introduce a bit of certainty in these people's lives. Now, there would be some cost when it all adds up, coming from covering the people currently in a benefit trap. However, in a welfare state, reforms like this always involve cost. You need to invest money to get things done. That's just a fact of life. And many believe that at least a part of those costs would be recouped in the lower expenditures from stress related in mental health and other such matters. Many people take a moral stand against the UBI, saying, we cannot just give free money to people who don't want to work. But we already do that. Everyone is entitled to some minimum benefits, even if they put in just the barest token effort or do nothing at all. The UBI is precisely intended to give everyone an opportunity to work without it affecting their benefits due to a benefits trap. A more interesting criticism comes from the left. It posits the UBI as a neoliberal plot by the likes of Milton Friedman. The UBI is said to bolster the capacity of firms to move from stable employment contracts to a model based on temporary labor. And there are, indeed, neoliberal UBI proponents who want nothing more than that. However, this is not a reason to be against the UBI as a whole. After all, the alternative is a means-tested welfare system, and this can also be used to advance neoliberal goals. It is still a reminder that UBI is not a magic bullet to all of the problems in a society. We will still need a robust capacity of state intervention to fix and replace the failures of the markets, and an active labor movement to ensure that the cheap labor paradigm does not take over. And one final thing. Remember when I said that the experiment was dismissed? It didn't lead to improved employment figures, it only improved the general welfare of the people. And how far have we fallen from the original ideal of a welfare state when that's not enough? Now, the other issue I'm going to discuss is the currently ongoing constitutional review of the social and healthcare reform. And when I say ongoing, I mean that between the time this video is shot, indeed at the time that this video is shot and published, we will have more information on what the Constitutional Committee says, which I will then discuss in 2 weeks' time. Either way, a few notes are needed on the constitutional process. Unlike in, say, the United States, the most important institution regarding the constitutionality of Finnish laws is not the Supreme Court, but instead the Constitutional Committee of the Parliament. Doesn't that politicize the Constitution, many would ask? But the United States shows us that Supreme Courts can and do also become political organs. Another difference between the United States and Finland: the American Constitution, due to its history involving gentlemen and slave owners, has traditionally been quite restrictive when it comes to attempts to establish a welfare state. The Finnish constitution, by comparison, is built as a sustaining pillar of a welfare state, guaranteeing people not only rights like the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion, but also a right to a proper healthcare, education, and so on. It is thus unsurprising that it is often the right wing arguing that we should not pay that much attention to a strict interpretation of the constitution. Indeed, the Finnish conservatives have been on an overdrive regarding how restrictive they find the constitution, not only regarding healthcare, but also the new acts on how the state intelligence services can snoop on Finnish citizens. Regarding the latter matter, the defense minister called critical constitutional expert the constitutional Taliban, and the right-wing rhetoric regarding the constitution and healthcare is often hardly different. As I mentioned the last time, the political basis of this reform is quite simple. The main parties of government, Centre and National Coalition, made a deal. They both would be getting an important goal of their party through, and in exchange they would swallow something they don't like. The Centre was assured that future administration of healthcare would happen in the context of self-governing regions, while National Coalition got through its so-called freedom of choice, which favors outsourcing to private healthcare providers. Both of these have some issues regarding constitutionality. The self-governing regions themselves are not that much a problem, but the Centre has insisted that there would be 18 of them, even though healthcare experts recommend a much smaller number, so that all of them would be big enough to comfortably handle the necessary duties. This would lead to troubles regarding the equality in service provision for all citizens across Finland mandated by the constitution. The so-called freedom of choice model causes much more serious issues. One of the major ones was related to the original intent of creating regional public corporations for public healthcare for so-called fair competition with private entities. This was seen as unconstitutional and was subsequently scrapped. However, there continues to be a bevy of other smaller issues, such as the degree to which the EU has to be notified of various aspects of the reform, considering the Union's competition directives. This is all quite technical and also confusing, but the central point remains. The Finnish constitution offers people basic rights on various welfare services, and when this collide with a model based on private profit-seeking, there are issues. The best solution would be scrapping the so-called freedom of choice. However, doing this or even delaying its implementation and implementing regions first is politically completely untenable for the National Coalition Party, which really does not like the region-based model it had to swallow as a compromise. The party is afraid that it does not get its model implemented now, it will never be implemented, since no other party likes that model, and for a good reason. Thus, if the government social and healthcare reform falls no, perhaps we can get on with the process of building an actually beneficial healthcare model, preferably one not influenced by the ideology of private profit seeking. Well, that's all for these 2 weeks. Once again, a good night, or a good day, or a good morning, or whatever it is in your time zone.